One thing that I always bring up to our employees when we talk about distracted driving is how would we live with that? In reality, if we had to check that email or check that text message and you caused a crash, or maybe you hurt somebody or maybe you killed somebody, and there is no way that we would ever come back to that situation and revisit and say, I caused that, but I really needed to see that text message.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zac. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zac. I'm the founder and CEO of Yellowbird. Joining us today, and I am very excited to have him, is Zac Elliott. He is a safety director for Mead Hunt. He is one of the nation's, Mead Hunt is one of the nation's largest or leading architecture, planning, engineering, and construction management organizations. Zac brings with him 12 plus years of construction safety experience, 6 plus years of tradesman work, which I love. I love having, we'll talk about this, but the meaningfulness of having somebody who's done the job help on the safety side. He has hands-on experience. He's got corporate leadership experience. He's builds positive cultures and safety mindsets. And he's implemented programs that truly protect and empower people. And so with that, I want to thank you, Zac, for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Michael.
So I try to always start with, it's not a softball, but it is a soft thing, which is, who are you as an individual? And from a personal perspective, where are you from, family, anything you want to share with our listeners about, Zac the man rather than Zac the director of safety?
I'm a lighthearted guy, I would say, who cares, deeply about people, which led me into this industry. Very close with my family, have a wonderful, loving life. Grew up in the Midwest. I live in the Madison, Wisconsin area, and I have as you might be able to see in the background, kind of a deep obsession with fishing. So that's how I like to spend my free time. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So what kind of fishing do you enjoy doing the most? I mean, do you do all sorts or?
Bit of a one-trick pony. I'm a hardcore walleye fisherman, which is a freshwater species that is pretty prevalent in the Midwest and Canada. So my father and I spent a lot of time chasing walleye around. And
Yeah, it's funny. I love being outdoors myself, and it's more than just the actions that you're doing, the activity that you're doing. I personally, I talk about golf a fair amount because I do enjoy golfing, but my wife always says, why do you love it so much? And I say, honestly, it's a walk in the park. Like you see nature, you are out there breathing in and out, you're swinging a golf club, sometimes well, sometimes not. In your case, sometimes you're catching and sometimes you're fishing. And it's not always the same thing. So yeah, that's I totally understand that. So and I'm sorry. So you've been married for
I'm a newlywed, actually. Yeah, I'm a bit of a newlywed. We got married in March, and
wow,
very
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, we got married at state capitol, and it was intended to be a tiny, tiny wedding. So we showed up, and unbeknownst to us, there was a Girl Scout convention going on at the Capitol at the same time. So we ended up having an audience to our wedding of about 200 when it was only supposed to be 4 people. But it was awesome. Yeah. Yeah. They pronounced us husband and wife, and we didn't realize we had an audience, and the Capitol exploded in applause. And
Oh,
we looked over the balcony, and there was, probably 150, 200 people watching us get married. So it was pretty
oh,
cool.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, good for you, man. And that must have been quite a thing. And by the way, if it was Boy Scouts versus a Girl Scout convention, probably wouldn't have gotten any kind of response. But
Right.
all those little girls are hearing about the yeah, yeah. And man, there is no such tone in the world than little girls cheering and screaming. There is a peak. I'm a girl dad, and I go to these cheer dance competitions and so forth. There is a tone that I don't know how these girls hit it, but they do, and it's like, oh, that like literally, it's like a dog tone, not in a bad way. It's just a very high pitch. So, talking about the business and your role and the industry, how did you? Well, maybe first, just to give people a little bit of understanding of what Mead Hunt does and your head count and all that kind of stuff, where you do things, why you do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I guess first, Mead Hunt is a fabulous company. I've been here for a little over 8 years, and I certainly plan on spending the rest of my career here. But we're a company right now of 1,500-ish, and it's been growing substantially. I think when I came on board, 8 years ago, we were 650, 700, and we'll continue to grow. Um, we are a nationwide company, and we're an architecture, engineering, consulting, and construction management company. Um, we have groups that focus on architectural and building engineering. Airports, our aviation group. We have a group that focuses on food and beverage. We have a gas reduction group. We have a transportation group and we have a water group. So very diverse. And, therefore we work in a lot of different environments and obviously different industries as well.
Interesting. And you are nationwide. Are there any real hot spots from a physical perspective, or do you do a lot in California or Texas or New Mexico, whatever? Like, yeah.
Yeah, we are all over. I would say each group kind of has their own specific hotspots. Our transportation group is really hot in South Carolina and Wisconsin and West Virginia. I don't want to leave out states. I don't want to offend anybody, but but yeah, from group to group, yeah, I'll say our water group is really heavy in Florida and California. So there is some of that for sure.
Interesting. So yeah, and you've mentioned some states that can be challenging at times to just keep on top of the requirements and regulations and staying, in the rules and guidelines, which is not what we're all about on this podcast, but we do recognize, or I do recognize, that that is part of our job, whether we like it or not. That is part of our job. By the way, my son is studying architecture. And he's doing great. He's a junior, so he's getting kind of on the end of his undergrad. He still has to get the master's.
Yeah, when he's ready, Michael, shoot me a message and we can help put him in touch with some people to talk to.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. That's very kind of you. I really enjoy. Never thought I would enjoy listening to him talk about his projects right now. Like he's excited, he's passionate, and he's working on things that he really loves to do. And I didn't have that in college, and I frankly didn't have that until I was in my 20s or 30s, really. So it's nice to see uh, a vocation like that. That
Absolutely. I agree. I was right there with you. I didn't know what I was going to do. My father is a carpenter and superintendent and always had exposure to construction. So I fell into construction and, as you mentioned, worked in the trades and then found safety through the trades. And yeah, that
Yeah.
took
So
a little
tell
while.
me more. Tell me more about that. So you got into construction with your family and with your father, and
Yeah.
then what trades were you primarily in, and what were you doing, and then how'd you get into safety?
So really, I cut my teeth in concrete, you know, um, forming concrete, pouring concrete, finishing concrete. And also, I was a general labor early on as well, and then a cement finisher. So, yeah, that's where I cut my teeth. And, I'd work construction through the summers during college. And, I was great experience, good trade, as a college student, could make pretty decent money. So it was a really nice perk where I could, be frugal, work all summer, save money, and then really not have to work a lot during the school year. Um, so yeah, that's where I cut my teeth. And then through working in the trades, the contractor that I worked for, a large builder in the Madison, Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, they really set a practice of hiring the majority of their safety professionals out of the field. And,
Such a good policy. It
yeah,
really is. It's such a good strategy to get people who can speak the language.
I think it
I love to hear when people do it are doing that.
yeah, it goes a long ways, absolutely. And I don't think that, I would be the safety professional. I know I wouldn't be the safety professional I am today without having that experience. And I think, as you said, you can speak the language, you can understand, their challenges, even their frustrations. Um, and you may be able to gain some respect on your perspectives, through those experiences as well. When I was on the contractor side of things, I don't really get this opportunity much these days, but when I was on the contractor side of things, I would make a point to periodically jump in as a safety professional. I would jump in a concrete pour with them once in a while, and I would help them pour concrete. And that meant that meant a lot, um, and went a long ways. So yeah.
And you were good at it and knew what you were doing because
Yeah,
they did,
that's
you didn't add to the it's great.
yeah,
Now he's trying to a trust fall and
yeah,
now I got to worry about this guy screwing up my pour.
yeah. I would like to believe that that's the case. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Mm,
awesome.
mm.
So along those lines and talking about just general management of your safety programs. So are you over all four or all the number of operations from a safety and oversight perspective? Are you involved at all the different business units?
Yes, I'm involved with, employees from all business units, absolutely. As, our safety director, yeah, I communicate with all of our groups. Now, we are in a bit of a unique situation compared to being on the contractor side of things where I came from and spent significant time in the safety world where we do some construction management. That's not the majority of the work that we do as a consulting and engineering and architecture firm, but we spend a ton of time out in construction and out in that world and out at client facilities and in things like food and beverage and so on. So we don't control most of the environments that we work in. Some of them we do on the CM side of things, but we have a lot of people that are out there with that exposure. So we spend a lot of time, talking about the risks and this exposure and the awareness and so on.
So do you generally have a risk person that's dedicated as the company representative on the sites? Like eat
Yeah, if we are managing the sites as construction managers, yes, we will do that. From a consulting perspective and an engineering perspective, no, that's not.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So I remember we were talking when we did our pre-interview, and we were talking about fleet safety and fleet management, and it's one of the more challenging things, like just distracted driving and fatigue and things like that. How are you managing that right now? Like, what is what does your program look like from just a general fleet operation perspective?
Thank you, Michael. I mean, if I was going to identify, one thing that keeps me up at night, um, it is the amount of driving that we do as a business. In this world, we're constantly traveling, and that involves a lot of traveling or a lot of driving, I should say. And we track the mileage that we drive as well. And last year, we put on over 5 million miles for business. Um, So that's not commuting, from your home to the office. That is driving a fleet vehicle. That's renting a vehicle for business or driving your personal vehicle where, you can expense mileage or charge the time. So for business, 5 million miles. So we put a lot of focus there. And some things that we do on the back end is we make sure that the experiences, if you will, of our drivers meet our qualifications or our satisfaction. So we do run motor vehicle records and then continuously monitor those for all of our employees because really everybody could be a driver at some point. And
Sure.
we've set some standards for what is acceptable based on experiences and what would put you on a no drive, if you will.
Got
So
it.
we do that. Um, we also, we have those wonderful, and that's a little bit of sarcasm. How's my driving stickers on the back of our
Sure.
fleet vehicles, which I have a bit of a love hate relationship with. That they definitely have a place, and they
Yep.
help, but sometimes they're a little bit frustrating.
Yes,
So
of course they are. Yep. Yep. Yep.
so we do that. Um, and we dabble in telematics as well. In addition to that, we talk about driving safety all the time. We have distracted driving policies. We have some fatigue standards that we follow as well. But again, it is a huge exposure. So we talk about it all the time. We empower our employees from a fatigue perspective. If you need to stay the night because you're too tired to make that 2-hour drive home or whatever it is, get a hotel room. If you have to charge that to the safety code, charge it to the safety code. We don't want somebody falling asleep at the wheel. We have distracted driving policies as well, but we also try to bring just the human side of these things into it as much as we can. Because, at the end of the day, it's a policy and you have to decide if you're going to follow it or not. And, with that being said, we really want, to bring the human side and think about the what ifs. And one thing that I always bring up to our employees when we talk about distracted driving is, you know, how how would we live with that? How would you live with that in reality if, we had to check that email or check that text message and you caused a crash? Maybe that crash only ended up in property damage, or maybe you hurt
If you're
somebody.
lucky. If
If
you're
you're lucky,
lucky.
right, exactly. Or maybe you hurt somebody, or maybe you killed somebody. And there is no way that we would ever come back to that situation and revisit and say, yeah, I caused that, but oh, I really needed to see that text message. We would never look at it that way, right?
Never.
But that's the reality of what could happen. And we also talk a lot about, this trickle down impact where if we take risk, there's risk that impacts us and our well-being, and that's one thing. But when we start thinking about that from the perspective of being distracted or fatigued when we're on the road, it's not just us we're putting at risk, right? It's
Right.
every single person that's sharing the road with us. And then we can think about that even deeper and trickle down where it's not just us, it's not just them, it's our loved ones, it's their loved ones that would be impacted negatively because we wanted to see an email or a text message.
Right.
We would never be okay with that.
It's interesting. I've talked about this a fair amount. She's probably been driving now for about 6 months, but I was doing these podcasts before she was driving, and I'll be doing them long after. And when you're teaching a 16-year-old to drive, or a 15-year-old, I should say, really, you realize all your own bad habits and all your own things, and how, and she obviously, because little girls love to do this, pointed out to me the things that I should not be doing often. Anything from speed of rate of speed to glancing at my phone, and she's right. I had to kind of realize, like, I need to teach her that it applies to me too. This is actually, there is a reason There is a reason for this. Um, and it was funny because I do these discussions, we have these talks, and that, like I said, we are a human to human discussion, and that's what I like to do. And I ask people, and you've already answered it, so I won't ask you right now, but like, do you how do you communicate this to the people that may or may not be following the guidelines? Because guidelines are frankly not it's the outcomes that we care about. The guidelines are what they are. It's the outcomes that we care about. And, people generally speaking will take it back to the human story. How would you feel how would you feel if you saw your teenage daughter or son driving in the state that you were driving in? How would you feel if you had somebody who was a electrical apprentice and decided that lockout tagout wasn't I don't need to shut off the power source. I'm just going to really quickly switch out this thing. Would you let your son do it? Would you let your daughter do that? And all of a sudden the human story comes into this. I um I talk a lot about understanding the person that's going to go to a site, and how what we do at Yellowbird is we get to know our pros so deeply. Like, best part about AI in today's world is that if somebody says I have all these acronyms after my name, they mean something. You have learned very specific things, and each one of those is your education, and that's great. But also, if I've worked for a logistics and trucking company for 15 years and I was responsible for their safety group, and now I'm retired and I am being asked to come do a distracted driver training, who better to do that than that person who all they did was run trucks all day long every single day, and they knew how to train that program. And it's funny because we talk about these things of understanding um, external expertise versus internal expertise. So, how do you guys view that as a team? Like, do you look at using external resources? How do you and what's important in the evaluation of, do I ship somebody on my team or do I find an external resource?
We definitely do utilize some external resources. At the same time, we try to do as much internally as we can as well. You know, we have a pretty small team, and we know our industry pretty well. And having relationships with our employees is really important. So not only do we see safety training as an opportunity to educate our employees, but also build those relationships and those comfort levels with reaching out to my team. But at the same time, we recognize that there's areas that we just don't have the expertise, so we will rely on outside sources to resources to help us with that, things like electrical training. Yeah, and we have a commissioning team that has some pretty high exposure to potential electrical hazards. So we'll outsource some of that. A lot of times we'll outsource our aerial lift training if that needs to happen. We'll outsource our Red Cross or I'm sorry, our first aid CPR AED training. Um, so yeah, recognizing that one, we may not be experts in the area, or two, from a convenience perspective, we can't get there in a timely fashion in order to do that. So
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I've always found to be ironic is that often we'll convolute um, internal versus external with speed and accuracy. And you'll go, well, I can't do it fast enough, so I'm going to give up my accuracy or my quality, but I'm going to have somebody come through. And I've always felt like you don't have to do that. You don't have to have that trade off. And that's one of my missions, is to make sure that you get somebody equal or better on the subject, but not representing your company necessarily. You said something that has really resonated with me. We do a lot of surveys, site surveys, and so forth. So somebody says, "Hey, I got my annual rig inspections." We have bid right now. It's around 100 sites that we're going to go out and do a rig audit. We're going to do the rigging, and you have to do it by law, but each state has nuances, and so it's a great opportunity. But that is a tactical, functional thing. We know who could do it. We know what they need to deliver, and that's not the time to share a beer and get to know someone. That's the time to go do a job. But then there are moments of the training, which I've never really thought about. And, I'm kind of talking against my own model. But reality is, there are parts of the training ecosystem that functionally you need to outsource it because it's just voluminous. Forklift as an example. The turnover on forklift drivers, 3, 4, 500% a year. By the time you finish your forklift driving training for all your operators, you've got to get another one going just because they're just voluminous, OSHA 10s and so forth. But then you get maybe OSHA 30s are done internally because you're also getting to know these human beings because you're together for 30 hours of training, and you weave in the message of the company, right? And that makes a lot of sense. And I don't often even think about it that way because I'm always focused on how many months a year are your people living on airplanes and paying for this and the efficiency that we're solving for. But it actually makes a lot of sense that there will be things that are that you want to own for other reasons than just quality of the training. I guess we're going to change gears a little bit here. I'm going to ask you one of these magic wand questions. So, Zach, if you could eliminate anything that is in this industry, whether it be a guideline, whether it be what practice people do, or even a law or a regulation, you got the magic wand. Where do you focus?
Well, this may not be a surprise to you, Michael, based on what I already said, but if I had a magic wand, I would eliminate everyone's ability to use their phone while they drove.
Yeah.
It's so important
Yeah.
that we give, driving all of the attention that it deserves while we're driving, and that's all of our attention. So, yeah, if I could eliminate anybody's ability to even be able to text, you think about the hierarchy of controls, and the most effective means to control a hazard is elimination. So, eliminating
Yes.
phones with vehicles is absolutely what I would do.
So from a internal perspective, you guys have used some telematics and you've used some other technologies and so forth. Um, are all of the now, do your people? I imagine they all drive company vehicles.
They don't. Yeah, no, not necessarily. We rent a lot of vehicles, and we also, sometimes use personal vehicles for business purposes as well. We we have 230-ish fleet vehicles. So
No, I was going to say, so that it changes the follow up a little bit, but I do wonder, and I have no idea. You talk about the hierarchy of risk, whether or not there is a mechanism like essentially the breathalyzer esque thing that you can't start the car unless your phone is in this box. By the way, anybody who listens to this, I'm not saying that anybody should do it. I'm just spitballing. So, but it is interesting, right? Like, there are mechanisms that don't allow for you to do certain things without other things, right?
absolutely. I mean, simply people can put their phone in do not disturb while driving, right? And that, can automatically go into effect when your phone ties to the Bluetooth in your vehicle, or based on movement of the vehicle. So, there's those things that, again, people have to make the decision to do it. But I think it's a really good first step to get people, used to not using their phone when they drive. Um, you know, as you know, you can't jump on the interstate right now and drive 5 minutes and not see somebody next to you that's using their phone. And people do it, without incident, right? Sometimes that happens. You do it without incident, and therefore we get complacent and we think that it's no big deal because I I've done it before and nothing happened. But as we all know, there's those split seconds when we're driving that we have to react. And if we're not present in that moment to avoid that situation, whatever it may be, you know, that incident may be worse or awful. Um, and again, it's never going to be worth it.
I support a few different organizations, and one of them that I support is a group called the Tela Verde Foundation, which is essentially women, imprisoned women, being upskilled in learning a vocation that they then help them get work when they come out, and it's really meaningful work. But Michelle Sirocco, who's their president, and she's a dear friend of mine, always says, you are officially judged by the worst possible day of your life by a decision that was made in a split second most of the time, and you're forever changed. And it's so true. Like, in nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to have a vehicle manslaughter charge against me. I mean, or worse, or whatever the thing is. And that's honestly, that is the theme of our industry, of the old timers saying, well, I've done it this way forever and I'm okay. And they're not wrong, but is it skill or luck? And do you really think that you would want your kid to do it that way? Would you want all of this kind of stuff? So I I I I love that. Is a good magic wand. That is a good magic wand. It's very, very cool. So I'm going to wrap this in this discussion today and ask you one more business question, and then we're gonna call it a day. And thank you for being here. On the business front, as you're growing so rapidly, and are you doing it through acquisition? I don't recall. Are you acquiring groups?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Organically and through acquisitions as well. So, yep.
Yeah. So what would you like to see in a perfect world as you bring all of these various backgrounds and cultures and companies into the umbrella of your organization? What do you think is kind of the most important thing that you want to kind of get your arms around through this growth curve?
Yeah. Well, I think, um, not to sidestep the question too much, Michael, but as we grow, you know, this $1 billion question, challenge about culture becomes more and more challenging, right? And Mead Hunt has an amazing culture. We have some great great values that really set, you know, my group, my team, safety up for success. And our values are simply, we take care of people, which is safety. We do the right thing, which is safety, and we do what makes sense. Those are our values. And I think as we grow, making sure that our company culture stays strong is really important. And, when I was on the contractor side of things, we would spend all this time talking about how do we have a strong safety culture? How do we build a strong safety culture? And, sometimes beating our heads on the table, like, how do we get people to care about safety? And it wasn't until I came to a company that really takes care of their employees, a company that just culturally cares about people. And that has allowed, me to be set up for success and my team to be set up for success because we have this great foundation. And that is something that we need to make sure that we maintain as we grow. Because what I came to realize is you can't just have this one-off strong safety culture without having a strong company culture as a foundation to support you.
I love it. So, from your perspective, as you do this growth and acquisition, you have to continue to reinforce across the board consistency of caring, essentially. And that's integrated into the communication, that's integrated into the training, that's integrated in what you're checking and surveys and all that. So, okay.
that's integrated into, just our leadership, how accessible our leadership is. Anybody could reach out to our CEO or COO and have a conversation with them, no matter what position you're in. So, just maintaining while we're becoming a big company, maintaining, that smaller company feel.
Yeah, I often have conversations with people like this, and they'll say, we have a great culture. Our company leadership cares about safety. They care about the people, everything else. And then we'll get into the practices of how they integrate and how they work with their teams. And they're like, oh, we give the acquired company complete autonomy and they can do it however they want to do it, however they've been doing it. And I'm always in the back of my head, and I, by the way, have no idea if maybe it's exactly how you do it because I don't know, but I don't mean to be insulting if so, but it's really challenging to say the company I work for has a philosophy or a methodology that is truly world class, but I'm going to let these divisions do it the way they want to do it. And it's like, well, why? And why wouldn't you put a program together to get under one human umbrella of culture?
I think, from my experience and the way that we approach this is we do get everybody there, but it is slow, right? Because there's the concern of coming in and just suddenly just shaking, the tree or whatever, you want to use there, and
Yeah,
really
yeah.
disrupting things. So, you
That
know,
makes sense. I mean, that
we
does
get
make sense.
there. Yeah, we get there, but depending on the size of the acquisition, and, the feedback, a lot of times slowly get there. We'll
Yeah,
go and
yeah.
just spend time with these people and get to know them and, slowly introduce things. Now,
Well, it's
that
funny
being
because
said,
integration is
yeah,
also a very important part of the becoming part of the family. Nobody just automatically feels comfortable
yeah.
to trust each other, right?
Yeah.
So go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's
Sorry.
certainly aspects where we'll say, "No, like, this is how it has to be day one."
Sure.
But there's other areas where we'll slowly, slowly transition. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Well, Zach, thank you so much for being with us. I enjoyed this conversation. I know our listeners are going to enjoy the conversation. Someday I'm going to be in your neck of the woods and you're going to go teach me how to catch a walleye.
Yeah.
But until then, I wish you great success and thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Great to chat with you.
Zach, I have a question as we prepare for the holiday. I love Thanksgiving. I think Thanksgiving is truly, if you think about the mission of the name, it is about giving thanks for the things that you have. And just gratitude is a very unappreciated thing in our world these days of aspirations and wanting more. If you have to think about your year and your company and your life, what is the one thing that you want to say, give thanks for this Thanksgiving?
The people in my life, I have the most amazing people in my life. My parents, very close with, they're incredible, spend a lot of time with them. I have the best wife in the world that is very supportive of me and the greatest friends that care about me as a person. So, the people in my life is what I'm certainly most thankful for.
Fantastic. So that was a perfect answer. So thank you so much, man. All right. Well, I'll let you get back to your day. I think we did pretty good on timing. I think we were pretty good on this one. So you'll get the final edits. You came across great, man, as I knew you would. And we'll talk soon. That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.